Good morning, all you beautiful folks who've tuned in for Cafecito con Colon, or also known as Brian Colon's Extrovert Therapy. And I am just so grateful to each and every one of you in the mornings when I get to see my day start and then know that I get to be joined by 50 or 60 people that are here to really just get information, optimism, and be lifted up each and every day. And I'm so honored and humbled that you would allow me to do that for you and with you each and every morning. Good morning, Trish Ruiz. Thank you for bringing your sunshine to Cafecito con Colon, and we are glad that Ernest Martinez is here, the wonderful spouse of Dr. Melina Martinez out of Santa Fe, and Dr. Roy Ball. I don't think he's missed a single day. One of the most supportive individuals in my life. And Pam, thank you for joining us this morning. Esteban, welcome back. Thank you so much. It is going to be a great day. Another day of renewal, another day where we have an opportunity to reset and continue to develop our new goals as we fall forward from this COVID-19 pandemic around the world. It is the one thing I think that, at least in our lifetime, in many ways that has brought us all together. It has leveled the emotional playing field. It has given us all a point of empathy for one another. There's a difference between sympathy and empathy is really being able to understand how to place yourselves in another person's shoes because you have a sense of what it is truly like to be there because of the experiences you've had. And I think this COVID-19 pandemic does just that, not just for people in Albuquerque, not just for people in central New Mexico, not just for people in urban New Mexico, but also in rural New Mexico, statewide, nationwide, and internationally. And I really think that the Easter messages that we heard, whether you were with the Pope on Easter Sunday for his message, or whether you had a different house of worship where you attended virtually, I think all the messages were the same, which was that we're in this together, we'll get through together, and that we'll be better and stronger for it. And even though many of us and our families will be hurting because of the losses we've suffered, many of us in New Mexico are suffering through what is our loved ones going through the effects of COVID-19, or several folks who have lost their lives to this pandemic. And so we offer our condolences to each and every one of those folks. But we do have that light of optimism, and that is one where we know that we will be stronger for this. And today we're going to really bring in a phenomenal leader in a sector that's so important, particularly as we advance through this process of self-quarantining, of isolation, of stress, financial concerns, millions of people being in a position where they never would have imagined they'd be, even just 45 days ago. And that is either unemployed or finding themselves severely lacking in resources that they typically have because of the situations and circumstances that we had no control over. As a result, we find ourselves with many families who are in crisis, families who often are on the edge every day anyway. And those folks have now been pushed. And there's that cliff effect. And we know that the stress in the homes often leads to uncomfortable situations and sometimes even violence. And today we're going to bring in Pam Wiseman, who's going to join us here in about 10 minutes and talk to us a little bit about the Coalition Against Domestic Violence here in New Mexico. Phenomenal work. And I think you will be impressed with not only her capacity to really kind of bring a conversation together in this important topic, but also her sincere dedication to addressing the issue and making sure that our families of New Mexico, the 2.1 million of us, have the resources necessary so that when we see something, we say something. So that when we're in a situation where we're scared, when we're in a situation where we're in danger, we know how to reach out. So let me just start out, as I always do, with some great news here in the land of enchantment. There's some great stories out there, as always. But let me just start out with saying thanks again to P&M. Not only did they establish that incredible grant in our community, the Albuquerque Journal covered some fun work that they're doing to thank the Farmington area medical workers and employees with about 150 meals and thousands of Girl Scout cookies. Just a fun little story there for you to enjoy coming out of the Albuquerque Journal today. The Las Cruces Sun News really covered some fun stuff going down there in Doña Ana County, beautiful southern New Mexico, the home to me for about 10 years. It was my home for 33% of my life because I've been there 10 out of 30 years. And then it was my home for a quarter of my life when I turned 40. And then now that I'm 50 years old, or I should say 50 years young, because I'm going to live to 100, which means I'm halfway there. I've got a B+. I'm working to get an A in life. And so I will tell you that now I can say that I lived in Las Cruces for 20% of my life, but it's really where I grew up in terms of being an adult. Moved down there when I was 18 years old and stayed there until I was 28 and went to law school here in Albuquerque at the beautiful UNM School of Law. But Doña Ana County was a beautiful place to become a young adult. It was a place of support. It was a place that embraced my entrepreneurial spirit, whether it was the car washes or laundromats or the Southern New Mexico Business Journal or the Southern New Mexico State Fair or all the things I did to survive while trying to go to college. It was a beautiful, beautiful place. It was also the place where I had my small cell phone business, which gave me the platform and opportunity to meet my beautiful bride of the last 25 years, nearly 25 years. We were married in the church down there in Las Cruces. Rafael was baptized down there. He was born at Las Cruces Memorial Medical, so it's a special place. Now, why did I do all that? No clue. But I'm glad you stayed and listened. But this is a great story coming out of Las Cruces with our firefighting community. You know, our first responders are really the heartbeat of so many communities. They're the ones that run into the buildings as we're all running out. But again, they are spreading love, sunshine, restoring people's faith in humanity, just like Team Chisholm and Brian's Angels are doing with over 2,000 care packages in New Mexico. But there's a great story for you out of Las Cruces Fire Department, who's offering birthday wishes to those young children who are celebrating their birthday in isolation. They don't typically they don't have their typical birthday party. And so the Las Cruces Fire Department is doing a great job. I also want to put up a quick fundraising shout out to Habitat for Humanity. Historically, they have allowed me and invited me to engage with them in a spectacular way as they do their Raising the Roof campaign. Housing security, food security, these are issues that are important to me because they're personal to me. I grew up in Section 8 housing in New Mexico down in Valencia County. I transitioned as I became an adult. I want to say thanks to Yvonne and to Sonia, who actually allowed me to sleep on their couch when I did not have a place to stay down in Las Cruces. You know who you are, Yvonne and Sonia. Love you very much, and I've never forgotten that 30 years later. But Habitat for Humanity is having a great, again, we talked about adjusting, being agile in this different time for us. And Habitat for Humanity is doing their Raising the Roof with Love online edition. And so I just wanted to provide that link to you so that after the Cafecito con Colon, you can go back and check that out. So thank you for doing that. I want to continue to make sure that I provide you important information. And that is, of course, the link to all that is COVID-19 related. That is the landing page for all that is COVID-19 related, whether it's you're looking for the numbers for New Mexico, and we've had some dramatic increase depending on what data points you use. Now remember, testing is through the roof in New Mexico thanks to the vision and foresight of our governor. But you can pull out different data points and either be optimistic or you can be quite troubled. And of course, the New Mexico Journal, the New Mexico Albuquerque Journal, headline was the New Mexico virus deaths jumped 55% in 2 days. Again, these deaths were with individuals who were compromised. They had underlying issues. Even the 40-year-old gentleman that passed away, prayers to his family. I understand that he had underlying conditions as well. But there is something important for you to think about. My deep concern right now is with our Native American sisters and brothers. We're trying to make a particular effort with Brian's Angels to reach out and provide food services to those communities. I'm very pleased to be working. I spoke at length yesterday with our Cabinet Secretary for Indian Affairs, and we're better collaborating and better coordinating and identifying the areas where we can spread that love, hope, and restore the people's faith in humanity in areas that are just completely underserved no matter what data points you want to look at. And in particular, as COVID-19 community spread is an issue in New Mexico, it's exponentially greater issue in our Native American communities because of their culture, because of their lack of resources to things that we take for granted. So let me just say good morning to a couple people this morning. And let me just say good morning, Jimmy Trujillo, one of our great Spanish colonial artists. Great to have you here this morning. Our wonderful county treasurer, Nancy Burse, is here. Kat, thank you for joining us. Our Democratic County Chair out of Los Alamos County. Thank you for hosting me last night for a few minutes. It's great to be on your Zoom meeting last night before we did the congressional Zoom. Ben Ray Lujan, our congressman, had a great Zoom meeting last night. Lynn Souther, thank you for joining us. Thanks for your good work at the Attorney General's office. Dr. Lang, thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Lang, I am half a century old. And Mandy, I'm glad you're here this morning. Great to see you. Esteban's always kind of got that gentle touch guiding my conversations with ideas and concepts that I may have forgotten to ask our guests. I appreciate that value. And thank you to the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence for tuning in this morning. And Terry, thank you for making the connection for us. Crystal Kugler, thank you. Thank you to Crystal and so many people who have helped us identify what families are in need out there by texting 505-270-2154. That's 505-270-2154. That's my personal cell phone. You tell me name, address, and phone number. Let them know we're going to bring a care package of love, hope, and inspiration to their front doors and try and restore their faith in humanity during this difficult time. Thank you, Crystal, for doing just that. Jim Buhog, one of my favorite Mero veteranos, served his country with distinction. He's on the mend. He's in recovery from physical ailment, and we are so glad to see you with us this morning. Give my best to Lynn. And then we got the Honorable Dennis Tim Salazar. Thank you for joining us this morning. Juliana, you're always with me. Alex, thank you for being a true son to me who inspires me daily with your incredible capacity to embrace all that is important. Dr. Dawson, good to see you this morning. Ralph Pavon, Paul Romero, Patricia L. Chavez, PLC Enterprises, Crystal Rael, one of our angels who's delivered packages. There are a lot of folks on this morning who I'd love to give a shout out to, but we are going to get started this morning. I will say that the Albuquerque Journal did a beautiful editorial today talking about the governor's actions and really particularly as it relates to Easter and to one of the pastors here in Albuquerque suing the state of New Mexico for putting in place the order that prohibited congregating on Easter Day. Not just on Easter Day, but in general, but particularly the issue was for Easter. The Journal headline is this: New Mexico responsiveness makes sure more are here for Easter 2021. New Mexico's responsiveness makes sure more people are here for Easter 2021. And I think that's exactly what drove the governor. She put public safety first in front of all other. She did try to do everything she could to be sensitive to the needs and respect historical approach as it relates to working with communities of faith. And the vast majority complied with her direction and her instruction. Some were not. She was concerned for public safety and she took decisive action. We're grateful to her and Dr. Howie Morales, our Lieutenant Governor, for leading in New Mexico to make sure that more people are here for Easter 2021. Thank you to the Albuquerque Journal. Not always a fan of the policies of this administration, but certainly thought that her actions for Easter were appropriate. We are very glad that the Army Corps of Engineers is getting ready to stand up the old hospital on Gibson to be a step-down care center for people who don't have COVID-19 but have secondary issues, secondary because the pandemic is the most critical issue as we try and flatten the curve. Good morning, Susie Turner. Give my best to your husband who continues to stay in touch with me and give me encouragement along the way. Thank you, Susie, for being with me. And then other good news, DoorDash in the local front, there's plenty of good news, but nationally, you've got different agencies and entities stepping up with resources. You've got Bill Gates, you've got so many folks, the guy who's given $1 billion and putting the Google Doc online to get that set up and let us know how he's trying to impact the fight against COVID-19. And as we move forward over the next year or two to identify a plausible and reliable vaccine so that as we have reoccurrence of COVID-19, we also have a vaccine to push back. So thank you to DoorDash for slashing your service fees there for delivery during this time. So let me just, I want to say thanks to all the news outlets for doing a great job of providing information to us on a regular basis. They join Cafecito con Colon for trying to provide good information to the public, but KRQE has a great kind of list of all the important phone numbers, and I thought I would post that for you this morning. It is 9:15. We're going to now move to this issue that is so critical during this difficult time for many, many families. And I want to begin by speaking about one other organization before we get Miss Wiseman on the phone. I want to talk about real quick now, and hold me accountable here, just 3 minutes or so, but the New Mexico Crisis and Access Line has developed New Mexico Connect. And that crisis access line has been serving the state for over 7 years. They fielded over 250,000 calls, 70,000 text messages, and averages 4,500 calls and text messages every single month. Now, New Mexico Connect has developed an app. Isn't this great? They developed an app that you can download to where we can have more capacity to serve people in crisis. And I want to thank you, Honorable Dennis Tim Salazar, for that kind word. But this is an app that was developed by New Mexico Connect. I thought it would be important for you to have that. Somebody, Adam Carriaga, who has spent a lifetime in behavioral health, making a difference, really making a difference. And I'm grateful to him. And he sent me this information here. That's the Apple download. And then, of course, we have our Android download. So if you're watching on your phone, you can click on these links. Thank you, Terry, for your encouragement and your enthusiasm on this important issue. There's a promotional video. That's really the thing I should have posted first. But here's the promotional video for the New Mexico Connect app. And it's a demo video for you. So please check out these links after Cafecito con Colon, because I want your undivided attention to go to our wonderful guest this morning who agreed to come on and share some important information with us. So keep in mind the New Mexico Crisis line, and that is really doing important work in this space of protecting our families during crisis. And I want to post that link, and then we're going to dial up Pam Wiseman right now. And so let's see here. I should have that number handy. Although, goodness, this phone has gotten an incredible number of phone calls just while I was on the line here. Now I'm having trouble identifying which call is the right next call to make to Pam Wiseman. I know her number starts with a 5, but there's a couple numbers there that start with 5, so I need to make sure I have the right phone number for you. So check out that New Mexico Crisis line. And now we're going to bring on a tremendous community leader who was referred to me by Terry Garcia, who's a tremendous advocate. Her handle on Facebook is Teresa Marie Garcia. She is amazing. And I want to say thank you, Teresa Marie, for always being an advocate. And then on a personal level, you seem to always be in my corner for anything that I do and step up for. You seem to be right there by my side helping. So I want to say thank you for that, Teresa Marie. And you have beautiful children. You know how much I care about them. And I'm in their corner as well. So let's get Pam on the line this morning. And as I have Pam on the line now, I want to tell you just a little bit about her. She has a master's and became the executive director of the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence in 2009. So she's got over a decade of leadership with this impactful and important organization. She served for 20 years before that. I don't know how she can do this. She still looks so young. But for 20 years, she served as executive director of Safe Passage out of Illinois. For their work with domestic violence and sexual assault and pushing back on these scourges in our communities that are affecting so many individuals. And they're in darkness, right? They're in the shadows. And Pam has always advocated for bringing those folks out of the shadows, empowering them with resources, allowing them to not just be victims, but to be survivors and people who thrive in our community in safety. And that's always the ultimate concern, is people's safety. She led efforts there to develop a statewide court response on improving the way we approach this issue and achieving accountability in domestic violence, and really wrote a whole guide about that. So we are thrilled to have her here. She has really just been doing great work over a decade here. She now provides assistance on the development of Court Watch efforts for New Mexico communities and empowering those individuals who find themselves in domestic violence situations. She developed a national conference hosted by the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence and she has really put New Mexico on the map for leading the discussion on this important issue. And I just want to say she has also written a book with a very creative title. It's called Ditch That Jerk. Dealing with men who control and abuse women. Yes, men who control and abuse women are jerks. She called us out in the community for saying, look, we need to call a spade a spade. If you are putting people in abusive relationships and controlling them, you're a jerk. And we won't stand for it. And we're going to push back. And we're going to call you what you are. And so she wrote a book called Ditch That Jerk. And we couldn't be more pleased, more honored, and more grateful for the work that Pam Wiseman does in New Mexico with the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Pam, welcome to Cafecito con Colon.
Yes, thank you very much, Brad. That's about the best introduction I think I've ever had.
Hey, that says a lot for somebody who's been a tremendous leader in this area of domestic violence pushback. And you've been doing it for 30 years, 3 decades. And I'm so grateful to have you on. For you to say you like the introduction, you just made my day. And it's only 9:21.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
You bet. Hey, Pam, tell us how you got to the land of enchantment after doing 20 years of deeply impactful work in Illinois.
How did I get here? Well, I had been operating a program that provided shelter and counseling for victims of domestic violence. I also started and ran a number of groups for people who were convicted of domestic violence. And after 20 years, I thought maybe I should try something else. Maybe I could be more impactful on a state level. And so this job came open and I applied and miraculously got it. And so here I am. And as you said, I've been here for 10 years.
Well, you are now a native New Mexican. I got to tell you, we've got New Mexicans that are so many generations in. Many of our Hispanic sisters and brothers are 14 generations in all 33 counties. And it's what makes New Mexico so beautiful, in our Native American community that was here far longer than 14 generations. This multicultural landscape that we have in New Mexico also requires a leader that has cultural competency in this space of domestic violence. And I know that the work you do embraces that concept of making sure that we meet people where they are with resources that resonate with them. And can you tell us a little bit about that transition from Illinois to a place that's much different in terms of population?
Yeah. Well, yes, it really is different. So on my first official day here in New Mexico, we had a big meeting, and all the domestic violence programs from all around the state were in the room, and I had decided I was going to put forth this set of goals, right? I had a flip chart, and so I talked for a half an hour and listed all these goals, and people didn't seem really at all interested. and then I told a story about how my one sort of remaining relative on my father's side that I knew of was living in New Mexico, and I didn't even know that until I got here. Huh. And someone said, the spirits brought you here. And I thought that was the sort of the kindest and thing I'd ever heard anyone say, and I felt that it was true. And I realized that everything is about relationships and people, and as you said, meeting them where they are, not prescriptions, not like I had a flip chart full of goals. So I've changed, I hope, for the better.
Sure.
From being here. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, you bet. And there's so many people online this morning, and I have to tell you, on my journey, who I have found to be just inspiring leaders in our community, and they are women, who are passionate about supporting one another and supporting their community and lifting up community. When I think about really lights in my life when I was in my youth, and women who had a positive impact on me, who were my peers, I've got Michelle Arteaga on the line with me this morning. Her mother was a very bold leader in Valencia County, and her daughter Michelle, who's with us this morning, was just someone who really embraced me with kindness always. And I'm glad that she's on the line with me. Valerie, thank you for being with me this morning. Rygard, and just there's so many women that have had just a positive impact on me. And when I think about those who have supported me on my journey the most, it is often women, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the compassion, empathy, and respect that they gave me. And so anytime I can help just be a conduit, right? I don't have the expertise. I don't have the ability to be truly empathetic. But what I can say is that I know that when you think about the big things that have happened, there seems to always be a woman front and center in our nation's history, either on the forefront, getting the credit on the front end, or now as we revisit history, like in New Mexico, we have now the first and only thoroughfare or highway or street that brings together Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta Avenue. And we're so grateful for that. And we know that New Mexican Dolores Huerta is finally, as she's aging and still being impactful, we lift up her and her work with Cesar Chavez. But I digress, and I'm sorry to do that. I did already post, Pam, the link to the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Tell us broadly a little bit about the organization and the work you've been doing there for 10 years, please.
Yes. So the New Mexico Coalition is a group of domestic violence programs from all over the state, from Carlsbad, Las Cruces, Silver City, Farmington, Taos, Santa Fe. Every corner of the state, there is a program that's serving domestic violence victims and often also people who are convicted of domestic violence. So my job is really to bring those people together, help give them a voice, a forum really for them to talk about what's happening in their communities and to provide training and information for their staff and their board and sometimes their clients to be able to serve their communities in the best way they know how. And of course, we also work with the legislature and we try to influence, policies and that sort of thing.
Well, so Pam, let me interrupt you right there because I think you're being incredibly humble and modest, as often very strong leaders I know do. But you don't just really kind of step in the legislature and try and influence. Really, you are the gold standard with so many other great organizations, but the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence really does provide a voice and a conduit for a unified approach to how in New Mexico we might approach this issue. Now, there's no question. See, today I'm wearing my purple shirt in your honor and in honor of the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence, but that work that you do in the public policy arena should not be taken lightly, right? I mean, you really are that voice for this important topic when it comes to our 112 members of the legislature and our executive branch, the governor, and we respect you for that and we're grateful for it. So I don't want you to understate that because if we really are going to make progress in New Mexico, and I think we should be, again, the gold standard is what I always strive for. And on Cafecito this morning, I just want to celebrate that work you've done because you really are the touch point. I know many of our 112 legislators look to you and the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence to give them guidance on how we really do get it right in New Mexico so that we can lift up our state.
Yeah, thank you. We try to really, focus everyone's attention, including our legislators, in the right place.
Sure.
And so one of the ways that we've done that is through messaging about the importance of communities in preventing violence. We know from research that when communities are not tolerant of domestic violence, there is less of it. So when communities say, no, that's not how we do things here, there are alternatives, you don't have to have this happen, things don't have to be this way, violence goes down. We know that. We don't have to do any more studies to figure that out. So we really need to focus our efforts there. The other thing we know is that accountability, and that doesn't have to mean someone goes to jail, but accountability is very important because when it is missing, right, domestic violence or any other kind of behavior gets worse. So we know that when there is no recognition of the severity of the problem of domestic violence, when people say, oh, don't do it again, and then they do it again, and maybe a couple of more times, and someone says, oh, don't do that anymore, that all that does really, we know that from, it's a basic psychological principle. People avoid punishment, and it gets worse. So that's the other thing we work on. How can we have accountability? How can we, at the very least, make sure that our courts and our judges send a message to people that is really not okay here?
Right.
So that's what it's going to take. Communities and the systems within our communities to say no to that. And that's harder than it sounds.
Sure.
That's what it would take.
Sure. No, I think that's right. When we talk about that cycle and domestic violence, and so much of that is resource driven in the household, right? Because we know that the traditional family puts the man who is often the offender when it comes to domestic violence in New Mexico in a position of financial power, which then causes a need for victims of domestic violence to find themselves staying in a situation that's not safe because they want to have their children with them, and they need the resources that are provided by that primary breadwinner. And that's where your information is so important, because you do have the capacity and the steps and the education and the network to be able to help those folks be empowered to actually leave those dangerous and violent situations when folks are not held accountable, right?
Yes, that's right. So one of the questions that we're asked all of the time is, why don't they just leave?
Right.
But like you said, often they can't. They don't have the resources. Maybe they're being surveilled, and that's, of course, all the worse now, right? One thing abusive people try to do is to isolate their victims, to sort of make them think, don't trust anybody else. Don't trust your family. They're really against you. Don't listen to anyone else. I'm the only one you need, and you shouldn't be going to anyone else. And now, right, it's been made, manifest, right? That's exactly what is happening, because people are cut off now in lots of ways from each other. Victims of domestic violence, many of them, they know what to do and how to do, and they've been keeping themselves and their children safe often. So people might think, oh, that's a terrible situation, which it is, and if she doesn't leave right now, we're going to have to do something about it, and it's her fault that she's a bad person. But victims are very good at protecting themselves, and especially protecting their children from abuse, and they endure a lot in the effort to do that. So they're pretty smart. The other thing I just want to mention is that in New Mexico, the conviction rate for domestic violence is 8%, and 80% of cases are just dismissed. So if you're a victim of domestic violence and you're thinking about, should I, call the police? Should I take this case to court? You're going to think twice, because the chances are good nothing will happen, and the person will be all the angrier about it. If you were going to testify against a mafia figure, for example, right, you would have a disguise, and they'd move you to a small place in Tucson, right? Because they would understand this is really dangerous. Sometimes people within the system think, oh, it's just a relationship thing, and it's not really that dangerous. But in fact, victims know whether it is or it isn't, and they take the steps they need to take to stay safe. And that might even include not calling the police or not going to court, because there's just not enough protection, and they know how it's going to turn out.
That's exactly right. And I appreciate you bringing me to that point, because that's a great segue. Accountability is so important in every aspect of our lives. I facilitate a men's group, and we talk about having accountability partners and making sure that we're all held accountable. I ask the voters of New Mexico to hold me accountable when I talk about saying that, the work I do is often nonpartisan, because we hold people accountable and fight waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, accountability is the first word in our set of 3 values at the Office of the State Auditor. Accountability, transparency, and excellence in government. That accountability is where it all starts. And when we talk about accountability, that means accountability from every aspect, from each side of that Rubik's Cube that is the complicated Rubik's Cube of domestic violence. And I want to say that I appreciate you putting an emphasis on that 8% conviction rate. I can tell you that, having done work in the district attorney's office early in my career, it was so difficult to really find a path to get our victims to participate in the legal process. And part of that was just their own psychological trauma of what they've been through and not wanting to have to live that by cooperating with the courts on that accountability. Others, it wasn't just about reliving, it was about fundamental fear. Fundamental fear that you talked about. And what a phenomenal analogy. And after 30 years, I bet you have a ton of great analogies. But what a phenomenal analogy that you provided as if we were going to be testifying against a mob boss. And so here's my hope. Here's my optimism. And if I may share it with you, Pam, and I hope you agree with me, Director Wiseman, I would just say this, that when I got onto the court, or when I got into the State Bar of New Mexico and became an attorney 20 years ago, nearly 20 years ago, one of the things that I wanted to do was to increase the diversity on our bench. And that meant ethnic diversity, it meant that multicultural diversity, but it also meant making sure that we were embracing women to lead on our bench. And now more than ever, with our Court of Appeals, it feels like the whole Court of Appeals is women, which is awesome. And our Supreme Court has a female Chief Justice. So many of our district judges are women, and we have so much more gender empowerment on the bench. And I like to think that as we carry this message of accountability and bringing victim advocates with our victims to the courtroom, making sure that we're holding folks accountable, making sure that those jerks do have to go to trial, and we don't have an 8% conviction rate, because most of those cases, 80%, are not prosecuted because we can't get all the parties present to prove up the domestic violence charges, that we ask and we look to those judges who are leading, who really have that capacity to be empathetic, because they do know somebody in their lives, a colleague who's a female and another woman who has found themselves in fear because of domestic violence and abuse. And I hope that we can all work together to do that. But how do we make sure that in 33 counties, particularly rural New Mexico, how do we make sure the resources are necessary for the organizations like yours and for the system to embrace that advocacy for our victims? How do you see that going forward in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, it's, things change so quickly, don't they?
Yep.
This year, for the first time in a number of years, we received, our programs received additional funding. But now, of course, because of the virus and the drop in gas and oil prices, that is put at risk, right? So our programs are operating on a shoestring budget, and I am quite serious about that. And yet what we ask them to do is phenomenal. Not only do we ask them to protect victims and their children and help them heal, which they do, we also ask them, many of them, to stop the violence of abusive people. When you think about that, it's like, here's $14 an hour, and I know you work at the Best Buy every day, but on Tuesdays, we want you to come and we'll train you to do these groups, and our expectation is that you're going to end violence. And that's kind of an absurdity, right? We haven't been able to end violence since, since Neanderthal. I don't know much about him, of course, but I presume, right, there was a lot of violence. We haven't been able to make really much of a dent in that at all. So to expect these people to change everything is wholly unrealistic. But what is realistic is continued education. And so I'm hoping that a fair amount of money eventually will come to our programs to do prevention work in the community, to talk to people about what causes violence, about the underlying conditions, and to try to make change, I think, in that way. And one of the things I just want to mention is, when we were talking about accountability, that when there are no consequences, as our statistics suggest, and by the way, that is not to blame DAs who are working hard, or law enforcement, or judges, or anyone, right? They're not bad people. That's not why we have a low conviction rate. It's because of the abusers that we have a low conviction rate, not because of them. But without consequences, people don't learn. So when someone is able to commit domestic violence over and over again, nothing happens. Like, well, that was okay. They don't learn. And when people are divorced from the consequences of what happens, so when, as communities, we're far away from the consequences of violence, then what we see here and in societies in general is a kind of collapse. Abusers, homes where there's violence often fall apart. communities where there is a lot of violence often fall apart, right? So consequences, accountability, those things really matter, but this is a hard subject to talk about. Thank you for talking about it, but people don't want to hear about it. It's icky, it's too close to home often, and but yet we have to do it. We have to find a way to do it where we're not saying, you were all terrible, but let's try to come together and see how this really is hurting all of us in New Mexico in ways we can't possibly see.
No question about that. And I think we can't heal as a community until we recognize that which ails us. And this is something that has ailed our community for far too long. We haven't been willing to talk about it. We have that 8% conviction rate, so we're not willing to hold people accountable on it. We haven't made it a priority to give resources to the DA's office and to victim advocates programs and to the court system to say, look, this is important. I mean, we need to continue thinking differently about how we approach this, whether it's the special court system that deals with these and so that provides protection to those who have been victims so that they can testify in knowing that they're going to be protected and have the resources to make that adjustment in their world to leave that individual who's been an abuser, that jerk, whether that jerk is a man or a woman. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the fact that I believe personally, I don't have the data. I'm not a scientist. You're the expert with 30 years experience, but I have the lens I look through, and I know my colleagues, and I know the personal stories I've heard from my colleagues. And there's often mental and physical abuse that is committed against men. And we are, because of our upbringing, our circumstances, environment, and expectations culturally, we are far less willing to stand up and say, yes, I've been abused in a relationship. And maybe because it takes us longer to actually recognize it, I'm not sure. But I know that for sure, I do know that from a personal pride, ego standpoint, our culture doesn't really provide that safe space for men to step forward and say, yes, I've been in an abusive relationship and I need to find a way out. And so I feel like we need to actually acknowledge that, if you don't mind.
Yes. And, violence thrives when there is a power differential, right? For whatever reason, somebody has the money, somebody, right, in society in general has more power, or in the case of men, maybe they're not able to talk about it. They wouldn't want anyone to know. So whenever an abusive person has a lot of power and the person they're abusing does not, it thrives. So it's that imbalance that is really the problem. And the other thing, it makes me think that one of the things we know is that inequality, where people are, there's a gross difference between the haves and the have-nots. Besides leading to a lack of trust and a sense of hopelessness, it also leads to support for authoritarianism, right? So people who live in unequal places, and I think that includes people who live in homes where there is violence and somebody has a lot of power, they're more likely to say, oh, it's okay for this person to be in charge of everything. And that's harmful to our safety, to our well-being. It's harmful to our democracy, right? And so in that way, right, I think our job is to try to find ways to balance out the power so that nobody has so much that they are able to abuse someone else without consequence.
I mean, that's so well stated. And in fact, so well stated, I'm quoting you on it. And I think that it's so important to really understand that power imbalance and what that means in the home or in those relationships where you do have that severe power imbalance. And that power imbalance takes people's ability to have good judgment for their personal safety. It takes that judgment away because the options seem so limited, and it's dark and it's alone and it's scary. And so for us, we need to create that safe space for people to come out. And part of that is reaching out to you. And I posted your 800 number earlier so that you can continue to reach out, that 1-800-799-SAFE number or the 22522 for text messaging. I put up the crisis hotline numbers earlier today. They take nearly 5,000 calls and texts each month. They do an amazing job. But the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence is an impactful powerful, important 501c3 in New Mexico, and I just can't be more grateful for the work you're doing. Tell us a little bit more about how you've seen the domestic violence landscape, or the scourge of domestic violence. What's been the it'll be too early to know about correlation and causation, but there are some common sense things we can think about in this time of isolation and in the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact. Tell us a little bit about the domestic violence issue in that space and in this time, because that's why people are tuned into Cafecito con Colon, because we're all kind of self-isolating and we find ourselves in a much different landscape.
Yeah. So people who are abusive are very often I know that from having worked with them.
Say
right?
that again, Pam. You cut out just a minute.
Yeah. People who are abusive are opportunists.
Okay.
And they look for ways to isolate and assert their power. And their goal is often to have control. It's really not more complicated than that. And so this virus really has given them a lot of opportunity that they wouldn't have had. And so people can't, victims of violence can't get away. The abuser is home all of the time. Abusers often surveil people, try to keep track of where they are.
What do you mean by that? Yeah, thank you for clarifying. When you say surveil people, what do you actually mean?
So they follow them.
Sure.
They track them through their phones. Sometimes they put things on car. A person who is abusive is fundamentally someone who is, I guess I would say, worried about losing control. And so if that person's victim can go out and talk to people and learn things about how what this person is doing is bad, that's not good for them. And so they track. They keep track of where people are and try to confine them as much as possible. And this virus has just made that job a lot easier, right, because people aren't going anywhere. And in addition to that, there's unemployment and the stress of it. One thing I do want to say about, I know we've said, well, abusers are jerks, and, there certainly are a fair number of them. Some of them have grown up in homes where there was violence, and I've heard them say, well, it was good enough for me, right? My dad was abusive. It was good enough for me, so it's good enough for my kids. It's good enough, for my partner. And that's sort of how they look at the world, that the whole point is to be in charge and to have power, and anything less than that is weakness and can't be tolerated. And so lots of what we do when we're working with people who committed violence is to help them see that, insisting on dominating people is really an expression of weakness, not of strength. Because why would you have to sit hard on someone? Well, because you're afraid they might get up. That's why, right?
Wow.
And so,
yeah. Powerful.
Let go of that.
Say that again. Say that again. That's very powerful. Why do we step on somebody or sit on somebody?
So abusers feel often that they have to dominate people, right? And so what we say is, yes, but why is that, right? And it's because, why do you have to sit hard on someone? You do that because you're afraid they might get up, right? And so really domination and that belief that you have to, have tight control over people is really, in fact, powerlessness. That's really what it is. And the Texas Family Violence Council they had a hotline, and they intended it for victims, but actually lots of people who were abusive called it. And they found that what motivated those people to want to change, there were three things. One was the belief that it doesn't have to be this way, because many people who are abusive think that it does. This is just the way things are. The second was, your children are suffering. Many people who are abusive don't think that's a factor. It's like, yeah, they see it, but big deal. But in fact, it's obviously very hard on children, and it lasts a lifetime. And then the third thing is, there's help available, right? Most people who are abusive don't think, wow, there's somebody I could talk to about this. So there is hope for people who are abusive, and I think we should be focused there. But in order for that to happen, there has to be an awareness and an experience of the consequences, and they have to think about those. They have to realize that they've hurt people, and then they have to decide, you know what, this is a choice, right? I'm abusing these people, not because I can't control myself, but I'm making a choice to do it, and maybe it's the wrong choice for them and for me.
That's powerful. I appreciate you bringing that side of the equation into the conversation today. It's now 10 till 10, and I don't want to keep you too long if you've got another engagement, but just a couple other quick touch points that I want to make sure that we get out that I feel are important. Can you talk to us quickly about our shelters open? How, during these times of the governor's orders that are so critical to flattening the curve in New Mexico, tell us a little bit about, are the shelters open? I know we've got great law enforcement leaders like Sergeant Jaramillo on the line with us this morning that try and connect people with resources who are in crisis and at that moment. But can you tell us just quickly about the resources in terms of shelters and places where people can be safe if they find themselves in a situation that includes domestic violence?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that. That's so important because our fear is that people will just assume somehow that our shelters are closed.
Right.
They are absolutely not closed. Okay. They're 24/7. They're available, and they can. If someone needs shelter, they can provide that. If someone needs counseling, if someone needs food, whatever it is, all of the services are available. Even services to offenders are available still. They're doing it by telephone or Zoom, but everything is still available. Excellent. And our programs are checking in now a lot with people, right? Having more phone calls. More people are wanting counseling than ever before, and they're doing it by phone. So they're actually, in that way, busier than they have been. But I will say it's been a real struggle for them because they want to protect victims and they want to protect their staff people and public safety. And that's a challenge sometimes to try to do both of those things. They have fewer staff. They've had to reduce them. They can't have people congregating together the way they used to. So it's been a strain for them to try to balance those things, but they are doing it, and they want people to know, please call us. Don't hesitate. We're available.
That's terrific. Thank you for continuing to provide those services. And I posted all the links again, the 800 number, the website. We posted some information that I pulled down that talked about what you need right now. Service providers are in critical need of food, milk, diapers, masks, and gloves, and other essential products. There's a phone number there for your organization, the New Mexico Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and how to get those resources to your stakeholders, and we appreciate that. Can you, as we wrap up this morning, folks want to really understand, we've posted your contact information. Is there value, and maybe not because there's so much local need and you have to have a good sense of what the local landscape and cultural texture is of that particular landscape. Is there a centralization? Would you consider yourself to be the centralizer? What about who sets the table to bring CYFD and other, adult protective services and all these other agencies in New Mexico, all the nonprofits that address this issue? Who sets that table? Is there a centralization, or do you feel like a diverse and dispersed group and approach is better for New Mexico? Is that a question that's fair? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it is very fair, and of course it's kind of both. So we do set the table. We have regular meetings with CYFD, DOH, all of the players, but we also then bring all of our providers together. So, for example, every Thursday we have a call with CYFD and DOH and everyone else, and every provider just about in the state is also on that call. We talk to our providers and we get information from them. How are things going? What do you need? And then we have a smaller group and we bring that to the funders and to the other state and local agencies, and then we all come together. So we're taking that diversity and making sure that nothing and nobody is left out, right? Terrific. So we hear all voices, and people have really stepped up. So these people all these programs, they're so busy, but they make time to be on these calls, to hear from each other. They get ideas from each other. They communicate with the state funders and state agencies. So it's really both. We create the conditions under which all that diversity can be brought into the arena, so that the decision makers, know what that is.
Well, that's fantastic, and it's good education, because I'm not sure that even those of us who are passionate about doing everything we can to address this issue really understood kind of what that organizational chart, so to speak, for addressing this issue looks like. And so it's good to know that you're the ones that are setting that table, working with organizations like CASA down in southern New Mexico. I posted some stories during our visit that were done by the press about the work you do. And of course, CASA pops up large in that work, and working with our court system is so important as we try and hold people accountable on all sides of that equation. And I've just reposted your landing page, and I just have to tell you, I posted also earlier your Facebook page, so people can like that and share it. And I hope I've provided a good representation of the work you do and the resources that are important for people to have at their fingertips during this visit. And you have been just a fantastic, fantastic guest on Cafecito con Colon, which is also known as my extrovert therapy. And it's keeping me sane, grounded, and impactful. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. So, Pam, let me give you, as it's just 4 minutes till the hour, you've gone long with us, and I'm grateful for that. Is there anything I didn't give you a chance to say that you'd like to share with the folks who've tuned in this morning? We've got about 50 people online this morning, and then by the end of the day, we'll have about 1,000 views of this page.
Wow. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, and obviously a lot of people are going to be seeing this, and I guess I would say, for people who are in domestic violence situations, I know this is a very scary time, and it might feel hopeless, but it will be over. And for people who are thinking of choosing to commit violence, to remember that this time will pass, and but what you do during it will not be forgotten.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah, behave now in ways that will be positive for when this is all over. Don't do anything now that you wouldn't want to have sort of be the way you are in the future.
I think that's beautiful, and that is so beautiful. Our actions now will have an impact on our future as we interact with our loved ones in the future. The actions that we take right now will definitely have an impact. Whether it's we bring them closer to us because we're all under the same roof at the same time in a way that we've never been in our lifetime. 24 hours a day, whether it's because you are continuing to be a teleworker who's now expected to be an educator that Aleli, my wife, has done for a quarter century nearly, and learning how to be a teacher and an employee or a civil servant or an essential worker. People are in such strange and high pressure circumstances right now, and we need them to be able to embrace the fact that the love that we show one another in our own household will have a substantial effect on the future of that household. And so I try and tell my men that I mentor and that I embrace every week to say, look, you got to make it easy to be good and hard to be bad, which means put things in place so that if things get stressful, that you have a plan of action before you reach that point, right? So that you know that, look, if things start escalating in the home, that it's going to be time for you to take that walk around the block and just extract, right, before we do something that's inappropriate. And I grew up in a household where there was a lot of stress. My father was a very sick man who was being pumped full of steroids every day just to keep him alive until he passed at the age of 49. Those steroids had a severe impact on his emotional balance and how he dealt with us. 20 after he passed, Pam, we learned about roid rage, and I saw that in my household on a very regular basis. My sister and my brother and I and my mom. Those incidents we never forgot, right? And so
That's right.
I just appreciate you saying that what we're doing now will have a lasting effect on how we interact with one another in our own households in the future. So thank you, Pam. You have been amazing. It's actually 10 o'clock on the hour. I'm going to let you go. Thank you for being with us. I posted a ton of links during our visit. I'm going to post a few little other links as I wrap up here today. But thank you for joining me today. Thank you for the great work you do. And thank you for loving New Mexico for the last decade. You've certainly made a difference. We hope you'll stay with us for a lifetime. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Take care. Yeah, stay safe.
Be well. So thank you, Pam. What a great Cafecito con Colon. I want to tell you today, I'm going to give you a couple quick links and then I'm going to jump off. Today is the hearing regarding our elections and whether we'll be able to do that by mail. The Supreme Court has taken all those briefs. They're going to have oral arguments today at 1:30. I posted the link so you can actually watch that. And they are going to do something that is highly unusual in my experience. They are going to what is called rule from the bench. So they're going to take those oral arguments today and we will be able to stand by and wait for them as they recess to their chambers. They will come back and provide a ruling on this extremely important issue. And I'm optimistic and hopeful that they will make what I consider to be the right decision, which means access to the ballots without putting our loved ones in danger, with making sure that we have those items in place to ensure a robust election where people can protect themselves and that we don't have to bring our election workers out into the public who often, 80% we know by Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse Oliver has said that 80% of our workers are in that high-risk class of individuals for data points in their age and such. We don't want to expose them. How are we going to get those workers if those folks can't do it? And so that's today at 1:30. So take a look at that link. I have been, again, telling this story a long time. Late last night, there was another story that came out about the impact in our Native American communities and how many citations went out over the weekend for that issue on the Navajo Nation. And we're trying to quarantine. The president is trying to do everything he can to flatten the curve. I will tell you, too, though, that as I am always, I'm optimistic as ever. New Zealand's Prime Minister is a source of light in the world. And she is leading on that link there that talks about how there are 55 positive news stories that you might have missed. And there they are. And I wanted to make sure you had a chance to see that. And then in the Good News Network, here we go. There's a great story about this young lady who's an angel cashier who picked up a $173 grocery bill for a senior shopper who was short of money. So there are some amazing stories out there. I hope you'll embrace them. There are amazing opportunities to do good in our community. Even Diddy's getting in on this with his Instagram going crazy. So yes, I'm kind of a pop culture guy. And yes, I do enjoy hip hop music. And those of you that know me know that I've always enjoyed hip hop music. But there's Diddy's little feed. And then let me just close with saying that make sure you make your appointment. Be a blood hero. I want to provide that link to you this morning. Do good. Reach out to 3 people who are in isolation. Reach out to 3 people who you might be concerned about, who might be at risk, and tell them about what you learned on Cafecito con Colon this morning. Reach out to our very beloved veterans who are isolated. Reach out to those who are in hospital centers who aren't able to have their loved ones with them during procedures or pregnancies and deliveries. Let them know they're not invisible. We haven't forgotten them. Reach out to 3 people who, if it wasn't for COVID-19, you wouldn't be reaching out because you've lost that connection. It's time to rebuild those connections, be more enriched. Don't just have a wide impact, have a deep impact. Thank you for having an impact on my life, New Mexico. I love you. New Mexicans, I love you. Share this feed. Hit me up on Instagram. Hit me up on Twitter. Follow this Facebook page. Thank you for the honor and privilege of serving the beautiful land of enchantment as your state auditor. My name is Brian Colon. You are loved by me and by so many. Call me anytime if I can be helpful. 505-270-2154. Text me for a care package of love, hope, and inspiration as we restore people's faith in humanity. Thanks to Team Chisholm and Brian's Angels. God bless. We love you. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.